Welcome back to Power and Policy, the show that navigates the twists and turns of geopolitics faster than a squirrel hopped up on maple syrup and freedom fries. Today, we're diving headfirst into the often overlooked but deeply intertwined world of US-Canada energy trade. Because, let's be honest, when was the last time you thought about where your electricity comes from? Probably sometime around the Jurassic period, when you last saw a power bill that didn't make you weep openly. We're talking about the flow of oil, the zap of electricity, and the constant hum of cross-border trade that keeps both nations chugging along. This isn't just about keeping the lights on, folks. It's about understanding how a policy hiccup in one country can send shockwaves through the entire North American energy grid. And trust me, when it comes to energy, the last thing you want is a shock, unless you're into that sort of thing, in which case, more power to you. But for the rest of us, let's unravel this complex relationship before we're all left in the dark. Over the next few minutes, we'll unpack how Canada's energy exports impact everything from your gas prices to the delicate dance of international diplomacy. We'll examine the potential pitfalls, the political tightrope walk, and the economic domino effect of trade tensions. So buckle up, grab your toque, and let's get energized. All right, let's start with a little-known fact that might shock you. Parts of the United States rely on Canada for their electricity. I know it sounds crazy, like finding out your local barista is secretly a moose in disguise, but it's true. States like New York, Michigan and Minnesota, places that experience winter with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for a tax audit, depend on Canadian provinces like Ontario to keep their lights on, especially when the polar vortex decides to throw a party and nobody RSVP'd. We're talking about a massive energy exchange that helps balance grid demand and keeps those energy bills from triggering an existential crisis. It's like a friendly neighbor agreement, but instead of borrowing a cup of sugar, we're talking megawatts of power surging across the border. And for the most part, it works surprisingly well. But here's the thing, this electrical lifeline isn't exactly etched in stone. While nobody's threatening to flip the switch off, at least not publicly, experts warn that even a slight policy shift, a supply chain hiccup, or an environmental regulation gone rogue could throw this delicate balance into disarray. And when it comes to electricity, disruption is just a fancy word for sitting in the dark, wondering if you paid your bill. Imagine, if you will, a world where energy costs skyrocket because of a trade dispute over, say, lumber tariffs. Suddenly, that charming rustic cabin getaway in Vermont doesn't seem so charming anymore, does it? And let's not even get started on the potential strain on the grid, which could make the great blackout of 2003 look like a casual game of power outage bingo. This isn't meant to scare you, but rather to highlight the importance of strong, stable cooperation between our two nations. We're talking about shared infrastructure, folks. The very veins and arteries of our energy systems. This isn't the time for political posturing or unilateral decisions that could leave millions in the dark. We need to be thinking long-term, strategically, and with a level of collaboration that would make even the most cynical diplomat crack a smile. So, the next time you flick on a light switch, take a moment to appreciate the invisible web of energy that connects us to our neighbors to the north. It's a powerful reminder that when it comes to energy security, we're all in this together, like it or not. Okay, let's talk about oil, shall we? Specifically, the vast reserves of black gold flowing south from Canada to the US. We're talking about a resource so crucial, so politically charged, it would make even the most jaded oil baron break out in a cold sweat. Because when it comes to energy dependence, the US and Canada are practically joined at the hip, like two awkward teenagers at their first school dance. Now you might have heard whispers of pipelines, Enbridge Keystone XL, names that spark debate hotter than a Texas oil field in July. And for good reason. These pipelines are the arteries pumping Canadian crude into the heart of the American economy. We're talking about a relationship where over 60% of US oil imports come from Canada. Let that sink in for a moment. That's more than just a friendly exchange, folks. That's a full-blown energy codependency. But with this reliance comes vulnerability. Imagine, if you will, a rogue wrench, a regulatory hiccup, or a particularly persuasive beaver disrupting that flow. Suddenly, those gas prices that already seem to fluctuate with the tides start looking like they're headed for the stratosphere. And let's not even get started on the impact on manufacturing, transportation, and basically every other industry that relies on the black gold to keep the wheels turning. Now, to be fair, Canada hasn't exactly threatened to turn off the taps. But here's the thing about energy security. It's not just about what's happening today. It's about the looming uncertainty of tomorrow. It's about those late-night policy meetings where someone whispers, "What if?" And suddenly, the entire room goes quiet. The debate about environmental impact, the push for renewable energy, the ever-present spectre of climate change, these are the factors shaping the future of this oil-dependent relationship. And while nobody has a crystal ball, except maybe that one guy on street corner who smells vaguely of patchouli, one thing is clear: the status quo can't last forever. So, the next time you're filling up your tank and silently cursing the oil companies, remember that the story of US-Canada energy trade is more complex than meets the eye. It's a story of interdependence, of political maneuvering, and of the constant search for energy security in an increasingly uncertain world. Let's be honest, nobody likes tariffs. They're the economic equivalent of finding a parking ticket on your windshield after a long day, an unwelcome surprise that leaves you feeling both frustrated and slightly violated. And when it comes to the US and Canada, two countries that generally pride themselves on their amicable relationship, tariffs can be particularly awkward, like accidentally calling your neighbor by their ex-spouse's name. Sure, we have agreements, treaties, and enough bureaucratic jargon to make your head spin. But even the best of friends can have their disagreements, and when it comes to trade, those disagreements can escalate faster than a game of Monopoly after someone flips the board. Remember that time the US slapped tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel? Or the ongoing saga of softwood lumber disputes that seem to have been going on since the dawn of time? Yeah, good times. These trade spats, as entertaining as they might be for us political commentators, have real-world consequences. We're talking about price hikes on everything from cars to beer, supply chain disruptions that would make your head spin, and industries left scrambling to adjust to the ever-changing whims of international trade. You see, tariffs might seem like a simple way to protect domestic industries, but in reality, they're more like economic hand grenades. Messy, unpredictable, and with the potential for a lot of collateral damage. Because when you raise the cost of imports, guess who ultimately foots the bill? That's right, folks, the consumer. You and me out here just trying to buy a reasonably priced washing machine without having to remortgage our homes. Now, both the US and Canada generally try to play nice in the trade sandbox. But with nationalist sentiment on the rise and global competition heating up, maintaining that delicate balance is becoming increasingly difficult. It's like trying to walk a tightrope while juggling chainsaws and a flock of angry pigeons. Impressive if you can pull it off, but a recipe for disaster if you falter. So the next time you hear about a trade dispute, don't just shrug it off as boring political maneuvering. These disagreements have the potential to impact your wallet, your job, and even your ability to enjoy a delicious Canadian maple syrup latte without breaking the bank. All right, let's talk about interconnectedness, shall we? Because when it comes to the US and Canada, we're not just talking about friendly neighbors sharing a border. We're talking about two economies so deeply intertwined, they make a plate of spaghetti look like a model of simplicity. Think about it. The US needs Canadian crude oil, natural gas, and hydroelectricity like a teenager needs Wi-Fi. It's practically an existential requirement. And Canada, well, they need access to the vast US market like a maple tree needs sap. It's essential for their economic well-being. It's a classic case of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, but with slightly higher stakes and a lot more paperwork. We're talking billions of dollars in energy imports flowing south annually, fueling everything from your gas-guzzling pickup truck to those energy-efficient light bulbs you pretend to use, but secretly replace with the old-fashioned kind, because let's be honest, the lighting is just better. But here's the catch. This economic symbiosis, while beneficial in many ways, also creates a certain level of vulnerability. Because when your supply chains are so intertwined, even a minor hiccup can send shockwaves through the entire system. Imagine a rogue snowstorm shutting down a pipeline, a labour dispute halting production, or a particularly stubborn flock of geese deciding to take up residence on a crucial shipping route. Suddenly, those just-in-time inventory models don't seem so efficient anymore, do they? And it's not just about energy. We're talking critical minerals like cobalt, nickel and lithium, the building blocks of everything from smartphones to electric car batteries. These materials, many of which are sourced from Canada, are essential for industries that drive both economies. So when trade relations get tense, or when a global pandemic throws a wrench into the works, the impact can be felt on both sides of the border. The takeaway here is simple. The US and Canada need each other. We're not talking about some romantic notion of continental brotherhood, but rather a cold, hard economic reality. So the next time you hear someone ranting about trade deficits or protectionist policies, remind them that when it comes to the North American economy, we're all in this together, whether we like it or not. Okay, let's play a little game, shall we? Imagine, if you will, a giant, incredibly complex game of dominoes, but instead of those little black tiles, we're talking about entire sectors of the United States and Canadian economies. Got the image? Good. Now flick one of those dominoes, just a tiny nudge, and watch what happens. That, my friends, is what happens when trade relations between the United States and Canada go off the rails. Suddenly, that seemingly minor tariff on imported steel isn't so minor anymore. It's a chain reaction, a ripple effect that can disrupt industries and impact consumers on both sides of the border. Think about it. Higher transportation costs due to a trade dispute. Guess who ends up paying for that? You, the consumer, at the grocery store, the gas pump, and pretty much everywhere else. Delays in material deliveries because of a border snafu. Say hello to production slowdowns, factory closures, and that sinking feeling when you realize that new car you ordered 6 months ago might not arrive until the next ice age. We're talking about inflationary pressure, job losses, and a general sense of economic unease that can spread faster than a rumor in a high school cafeteria. It's enough to make even the most ardent free trade advocate reconsider their stance on import quotas. And here's the kicker. It doesn't even have to be a major trade war to trigger this economic domino effect. Sometimes, all it takes is a natural disaster, a global pandemic, we've all been there, or even a particularly persuasive lobbying group to throw a wrench into the gears of international commerce. The lesson here, folks, is that maintaining stable, predictable trade relations between Canada and the United States isn't just some abstract economic theory. It's about protecting jobs, ensuring economic stability, and preventing a collective meltdown that would make the 2008 financial crisis look like a picnic. All right, let's talk geopolitics, shall we? Because the relationship between the United States and Canada isn't just about hockey rivalries and who makes the best maple syrup. Spoiler alert, it's Canada. It's about two nations, each with their own interests and ambitions, trying to navigate the treacherous waters of international diplomacy. Imagine, if you will, a grand ballroom filled with diplomats, politicians, and enough hair gel to sink a small island nation. The music is playing, the champagne is flowing, and everyone is smiling politely while secretly trying to outmaneuver each other in a high-stakes game of economic chess. In this metaphorical dance, Canada's energy exports and natural resources are their most valuable bargaining chips. It's their way of saying, hey, we've got what you need, so let's make a deal that works for both of us. And the United States, with its insatiable appetite for energy and its influential position on the world stage, is Canada's most important dance partner. But here's the thing. Even the most well-rehearsed dance routine can turn into a chaotic mosh pit if someone steps on the wrong toes. Buy American provisions, differing climate goals, and the occasional trade spat can all throw a wrench into the works, creating friction and mistrust. And let's not forget the audience, those other nations watching this diplomatic dance with a mixture of amusement and apprehension. Mexico, the EU, China, they're all taking notes, assessing alliances and looking for any sign of weakness they can exploit. So, how do Canada and the United States keep this diplomatic dance from devolving into a full-blown brawl? Well, it takes a delicate balance of cooperation, compromise, and a shared understanding that when it comes to international relations, a win-win scenario is always preferable to a lose-lose outcome. All right, let's cut to the chase, shall we? Because at the end of the day, all this talk about energy trade, tariffs, and diplomatic maneuvering boils down to one crucial question. How does it affect you, the average person just trying to get through the day without having an aneurysm? Well, here's the sobering truth. Those seemingly distant events on the global stage, a trade war, a pipeline explosion, a political coup in an oil-rich nation, they have a nasty habit of trickling down and impacting your wallet in ways you might not even realize. Remember that time the price of gas skyrocketed after a certain canal got blocked by a certain very stuck ship? Or how about when your grocery bills started looking more like a mortgage payment after a trade war disrupted global supply chains? Yeah, those are just a few examples of how global events can translate into real-world consequences for everyday consumers. And let's not forget about energy bills, those monthly statements that arrive with the inevitability of taxes and fill you with a sense of dread, usually reserved for visits from your in-laws. When energy supply chains are disrupted, whether by natural disasters, political instability, or good old-fashioned greed, guess who ends up footing the bill? You guessed it, the consumer. Then there are tariffs, those pesky little taxes on imported goods that can make everything from cars to electronics more expensive. While they might seem like a good idea in theory, protecting domestic industries, sticking it to those pesky foreigners, in reality they often end up hurting consumers more than they help. So the next time you're feeling overwhelmed by the complexity of it all, remember this. Every time you fill up your tank, pay your electricity bill, or buy a product that's been shipped from afar, you're participating in this complex, interconnected global system. And while you might not be able to control the actions of politicians or the whims of the global market, understanding how these forces impact your daily life can at least give you a sense of agency in a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable. So there you have it, folks. We've journeyed through the tangled web of United States-Canada energy trade, from the high-voltage power lines humming with cross-border electricity to the political battlegrounds of oil pipelines. We've seen how tariffs can be the economic equivalent of a temper tantrum, and how even the smallest trade hiccup can send ripples through the global economy. But most importantly, we've learned that this isn't just about abstract economic theories or political maneuvering. It's about the lights you turn on, the gas you pump, and the prices you pay for everyday goods. It's about understanding that we're all interconnected, whether we like it or not, in this grand, messy, and often unpredictable dance of global trade. So, what do you think? How do these energy dynamics affect your life? Hit us up in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of power and policy, be sure to subscribe for more. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and for the love of all that is good and holy, pay your energy bill on time.